Hi, it's Jen from CareersbyJenn.com with the second in a three-part quick career tips video series on interview tips. And if you missed the first video, last week's video, you can look down in the description box for a link. The first video was about things to do before you get to the actual interview. And today I'm going to share with you things to do during the interview that can be very helpful. Now, before we get into it, please be sure to hit the subscribe if you haven't already, and maybe the notification bell so that you will be notified when part 3 comes out. Well, today I have 3 tips to share with you to help you succeed during your interview. And so the first one of those is to listen and focus carefully. And this might sound like, well, of course I should be listening and focusing, but it can be hard to do that when you're nervous. It can be really hard to be fully focused and to be listening deeply because you might be worrying. You might be worrying about what you look like, or you might be worrying about how hard the questions they're going to ask you might be, or who all the people in the room are, or whether or not there were 3 interviews before you, or 16, or how many after you. There might be so many things that you're worrying about. But this part is really key. So listening to what the interviewer is asking you, and thinking about keeping in mind that even if the question seems weird, which sometimes it might be, there is a reason behind every single question. And the reasons are connected back to what skills and attributes the company is looking for in an employee. So there's no question that's asked just because. Well, I shouldn't say never, but in most cases, the questions have been carefully curated, and there's a reason behind each one of them. So if they ask you about conflict, they want to know how you handle it and what skills you bring to dealing with conflict in many situations, because maybe you'll have to deal with that in your new work situation if you're the lucky candidate. If they ask you about problem-solving skills, they don't want to know the whole backstory of the situation that you're using as an example. They don't want to know all of that. What they do want to know is how you go about solving problems, what steps you take to be able to do that, what critical thinking skills you have, how well you can think on your feet. And I do have a video, or maybe even 3, in this playlist about some of the questions that you might get asked, and I go into more depth on how best to answer those. So you might want to check those out if you haven't already. If they ask you to tell them what kind of animal you would be if you could be an animal, which again sounds really weird at first, maybe they're looking to see how quickly you can think in that moment, and how creative you can be, and how well you follow instructions. There will be a reason, and the reason may not be evident to you when you first hear the question. But the point is, interview questions are usually selected, as I said before, very carefully with particular goals in mind, and they're not random. They tend not to be random questions. So the more you focus and the better you listen to the entire question before you start to formulate your answer, the better your answer will be. And your answer will be even better if you have taken some time to prepare answers to some of the most common questions that might arise. Now, of course, there are going to be questions that you have no idea about and you can't practice, and you can't practice all of them. But if you've practiced at least some of them, then it'll go smoother. It'll be a better response on your part. Just remember why they've asked in the first place, and know that there is a reason. So that was tip number 1. Tip number 2 is to pay attention to your body language. Body language speaks volumes, and if you aren't paying attention to your body language, it can give you away in ways that you don't want to be telling. I have done whole podcasts on this subject, and I talk about body language in the book that I wrote too, that is designed for the first 3 months of a new job, but can also be helpful in preparing for a job interview and for a job search. But one of the things I want to say here on this video is to sit straight up in the chair. Don't slouch, or lean back. Because even if you don't intend it, these last two things are far less formal and more casual and can communicate that you aren't really caring about this interview, or worse, that you are super confident that you are their pick and they don't have to look for anyone else. They can stop searching. Sometimes your body language will say things that you don't intend. So you want to be really careful that you are sitting up straight and that you are looking interested and looking ready to answer the questions that are coming to you. Body language can scream things that you don't even want whispered. So be sure to smile, make eye contact, nod when people are speaking to you so that you look engaged. And you might do all of this stuff naturally, and that's great. But if you are someone who tends to freeze in situations where you are nervous, or you get that, what do they call that, resting bleep face, as they say, where you look angry when you're just thinking, you might want to practice smiling and at least looking a little bit more responsive, even if you are terrified inside. It is totally natural to be nervous at an interview, and the interview people know that. The people doing the interviews know that this is a test after all, right? You just don't want to look overly terrified. And the best way to do that is to remember to breathe, to smile often, and just to pay attention to your body language so that you are sitting up and keep your shoulders down. And if you're listening deeply and you're focusing on what it is they're asking, you will relax. You will relax as the interview goes on. I remember being in an interview where the person came in and they brought in their drink, and it was a coffee at the time, and they put it down on the table and they leaned back and they put ankle up on a knee, and honest to goodness, it was not a good situation. They were looking extremely confident, and it wasn't very professional, and they didn't get the job. And it wasn't just because of that. There were lots of other reasons, but that was part of it. All right, the third tip I have for you today is to be authentic and honest. And this is very important. If you are authentic to who you are and answer the questions honestly, that's going to be evident. If you fake an answer or you are not truthful, it's either going to be obvious in the moment or it's going to come back to haunt you later. So be yourself. And if you don't know how to answer something, just say that. Or ask a question to clarify if you didn't understand the question and get more information so that then you can answer. No one wants to hire someone who is dishonest or who fakes it. So don't fudge your experience or your skills. If you don't know how to do something they ask about, or you don't have a particular skill that they want, you can say that you're willing to learn it. You're willing to take a course. You're willing to go get some training on how to do that thing, whatever that thing happens to be. But no, I haven't had experience with that, but I'm very willing to learn, right? Now, by honesty, I don't mean revealing personal details about yourself to the point of, too much information. That is unnecessary and can be embarrassing to all involved. Also, you don't have to spill your guts and tell all your deepest, darkest secrets in a job interview. But by honesty and authenticity, I mean be truthful, answer the questions in the most authentic way that you can, because honesty and authenticity in general are valued attributes and will be appreciated in an interview situation. All right, well, that's part 2 of the interview tips series. And next time I will share a few tips on what to do after the interview, following the interview. So we talked about before, this one was about during, and I'm going to bring you some ways that you can rock the whole job search thing after, and by doing some things afterwards that can be helpful. If you appreciated this information, please give it a like and do subscribe. And if you want more in-depth interview skills training, I do have an online course. It's called How to Ace a Job Interview When You Haven't Interviewed in a Long Time. And in this course, I go into much more detail in all of these areas and more. And so I will link to the course below in the description box. It is a video course. You can work at your own pace, and it is available on the website, also at CareersbyJenn.com. And lots of people who have gone through the interview course have found it to be very, very helpful in preparing for their next job interview. All right, that's all I have for you today. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your week. And until next time, this is Jen. See you then.